Well done for making it over here in about a minute and a half. Excellent work. It's kind of important to think about what it is that we do here in L&D. Now, fundamentally, our job is to help people do different things. It's not about what they know, although that's part of the equation. It's not about their attitudes and their motivation, although that's part of the equation. It's actually about what they do and the skills that they have and that they have mastered in order to continue doing more of it more quickly, more effectively, more efficiently. So the skills-based organisation seems to me to be pretty close to my heart, certainly close to the heart of most of the people that I know within learning and development. And I am overjoyed. Dani Saadu, who's a wave maker and for the people manager for M Group, amongst other things, or head of people operations. So he's been involved in L&D and talent and recruitment for a number of years and is a big friend of the World of Learning event and has helped us out both here and in Birmingham in the past. Asi is from the stock exchange. We all know what the stock exchange is, or at least we all think we know what the stock exchange is. And as an organisation, there are some people with skills there. They are not just white boy gamblers, apparently. So that's good to know. So, so really pleased to have such experienced individuals with such a long track record in working towards developing skills and capabilities within organisation. Give it up for Dani and Asi, and I'll hand over to them.
Wow. I feel really important. I've not had an intro before, especially from Robin. You know you've made it when you get an intro. Hi guys, my name is Dani. I work for Wavemaker currently. Been in the kind of learning world for a number of years. I've got my lovely co-presenter with me, Asi, and we're going to take you through an interactive presentation on skill-based organisation. There's going to be questions at the end. We like to have a really informal approach. We're kind of talking to our peers here, so let's make it interactive and really flow and energetic. Let's do this. Yeah?
Perfect. I'm not allowed to sit like this at home, so I'm just waiting to be told off.
We're going to make it interactive, like I said. We're going to talk about it from our two different perspectives. We are lucky enough that we've both worked in organisations that have been through this transformation. So I'm going to talk about it from my perspective. Asi will talk about it from his perspective, and then we'll kind of bring it together and then have questions. The good thing about this presentation that it is highly practical, and you can implement this stuff. We don't believe in really complex theories and formulas. It's about, can you implement this? Is this something that you can actually walk out of here and actually do and make happen? And that is what we're about. How does that sound? Awesome, let's do this. So we're going to be talking about a skill-based organisation. You have to start every presentation, with a Google definition. So I've got a lovely one for you. So what is a skill-based organisation? Apologies, I'm going to read it out and then I'm going to focus on what I feel, and Asi agrees with me. I'm going to focus on what we feel is the most important part of this definition. So a skill-based organisation is a workplace structure that prioritises and values in employees' expertise, capability and specialised knowledge. Yeah? The key phrase to this definition is, it emphasises on the development and utilisation of specific skills to achieve organisational goals, fostering a culture that encourages continuous learning, mastery within the workforce, such as organisations leverage the diverse talents of their employees to enhance productivity, innovation and overall performance. Yeah? So the key phrase to this definition is emphasises the development and utilisation of specific skills. And specific skills comes in two factors. One, what are specific skills what are the critical and core skills that make the organisation successful right now? And identifying what those are and utilising them. The second thing is identifying what future skills the organisation is going to need and identifying them and put a kind of strategy in place to bring those skills into the organisation. So those are the two factors when we talk about specific skills. Does that make sense? Yeah? So the key thing to this definition is it emphasises the development and utilisation of specific skills to achieve organisational goals. That is what a skills-based organisation does. Okay? We're going to make this interactive. We're going to ask you a question. Hopefully we'll have a roaming mic. We'll ask you guys, yeah? From our perspective, which we're going to share in a moment, me and Asi, we had a really strong, compelling reason for why we made this transformation in the organizations we were in. So I want to ask you guys, and it might be answering the questions why you guys are here, why make the transformation? Who's willing to ask? Why make the transformation? Anybody? Please, yeah. Hold on.
I'm interested in knowing where you're going from. So you're talking about why make a transformation, but where are you going from?
So, great question. From my perspective, and I'll get Asi to jump in from his perspective. From my perspective, in our organization, we were from a place where learning was very ad hoc. If there was a problem, training, solve it.
You have your processes of learning needs analysis and focusing on the teams, and we're shipping this new product, so everybody needs to know how to use it, etc., etc., etc.
Correct. That was very much my world as well. Very much from a place where organizational learning really was only focused on if there was a major problem was kind of being discussed at board level, and it was causing a real critical issue. People understood the importance, but it was more focused on there's a development gap and a need, not necessarily on skills and what are the core skills within the business. That's kind of where my organization was. Was yours similar to that?
And I think you talk about tasks, you think about resources, not courses kind of language, that traditional, very well-defined L&D world.
Does anybody want to kind of give their view on why you would make this transformation? We've got our view. It'd just be nice to hear if anybody's got a view.
So we're looking to do it. We work in utilities, and it's very much an aging workforce, and it takes 20 years to learn the job. So for us, it's let's split the job down, less about the role they are employed to do and more about the skills and the tasks they can carry out.
Nice, love that. So multi-generational workforce, looking to how you can use this to kind of combat that. Love that. Anybody else?
Sorry about this. I'm going to use a football analogy.
I'm an Arsenal fan, so be careful.
Oh, I'm not. I'm a Liverpool fan.
Oh, mate.
How I see this is that if you have like games week to week and you see a problem and then you try and fix it, all you're ever doing is fixing a problem that you found, a week before or whatever else. But where you get clubs that have got a philosophy that runs right from the top all the way down, say to the youth teams, and they're all pulling in the same direction, you can take anyone from anywhere within that club and they'll be able to then implement what you're after.
Great football analogy. Excellent. Got a couple of people here. We'll take a couple more and then we'll move on.
I'm a Newcastle fan. It was definitely a goal.
Sorry. Inside joke, football.
Yeah, you kind of touched on it. I think there's been a time where learning is learning. It ticks the box, it fixes it. But there's no embedding, there's no follow-up. If you look at skills are practical, they're measurable. You can see the impact of them. So it's trying to get people to understand they have skills. From the start, we're really working on that. So I'm working on with brand new leaders, and they don't really understand that they are leaders. They don't understand the skills that they already have. So there's a bit of bringing that out of them to help them embed that and bring future skills on as well. So it looks at those two lenses you had earlier on, I think, as well.
Just in the essence of time, we'll take one more. I think we've got some people over here.
I have to say I was very worried when you started talking about football.
Hi. I think in my company we are making the transformation because we want to switch the mindset of our employees because they feel that learning on the work spot is cheating. So,
nice.
And this is the biggest challenge that they have right now. So everything I'm doing is to transform their mindset.
Lovely. From my perspective, I'll be really quick and then I'll hand over to Asif to give his perspective. The reason why we made the transformation in our organization, and a lot of you guys will probably kind of understand this, visualize and go back to just coming out of COVID. Yeah, COVID in our world, in my company, emphasized all the things and highlighted all the things we should have done pre-COVID. It kind of ramped it up. And one of the challenges we had coming out of COVID, we had a real talent shortage and we were really struggling to recruit. And we needed a better internal way of talent mobility, of moving our people fluidly and moving them. And we transformed in this way so that we focused on transferring people based on skills, not just on competency and experience. So it was massive for us, and it really helped us with our internal talent mobility.
For us, it was a two-side movement. You spoke about utilization before, and we were looking to make better use of the people that were part of the organization. But the other part of it was a different change, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes, that we were going through. And it was very important for us to make all of our employees connect to the organization. And I'll take you through the story in a minute or so.
Cool. So, from my perspective, there are three different approaches that we took when it came to creating a skills-based organization. We were lucky enough that we actually did all three of these things. You can choose one or two or three, it's entirely up to you. So the first one was that we created a skills framework, and I'll go into that in a bit more detail. We created a skills framework, which was a framework that allowed us to map and identify the core skills per department, per specialism. And what you could do is you could map your skills to say, this is how good I am in that skill, and it would then help you to create a career pathway and really lead to really clear career development. Yeah. The second approach was then, from that, we then created what we called a skills matrix. We were able to use an internal tool to create a matrix of all the skills across the organization and where people's skills were and how they mapped. Yeah. And what that then gave us was an opportunity and data to be able to say, these are the skills we're really strong at as an organization, and this is where we're lacking. Yeah? And therefore, are these skills critical to our organization, and do we need to do more? Do we need to do something from an organizational level? So it allowed us to do better organizational learning and also drive organizational development. The third thing was that we then created what we called an internal skills talent marketplace. So when we had vacancies, we would look internally and look at what are the core skills for this vacancy and who are the people across the business that have these skills that match. Let's go to them first proactively and say, there is a job here for you. This is the job, and the skills map across. Are you interested? And therefore we had an internal talent marketplace, and we would cross-charge departments depending on where they came from. Yeah. So those were the three approaches. So let me go into a bit more detail around what we did. So the first thing is that we created a skills framework. Really simply, there were three components to it. One, the skills framework, we identified 8 skills per department, per specialism. There were 4 core skills and 8 specific department skills, which were different for every department. Okay? The 4 core skills went through all the organization. Okay? But there were 4 specific department skills for each department. Okay? And when we created this skills framework, it looked like a competencies framework, but it was just based on skills. Okay? And what that would then allow us to do was that we had mid-year and end-of-year reviews. You could sit down and have a career conversation twice a year and map the skills in terms of where you were. We had 4 levels for each skill, as you can see. You got fundamental, skilled, advanced, and expert. And depending on where you sat across those 4 levels would then determine what development plan or action you had for that skill. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay? And what was good was that we had, if you are at this level and this is your job, this is what the ideal skills you should be mapping to. So if you're below that, you know that you're below that standard for those, as in your role for those skills, and therefore you'd create a development plan. If you're above those skills, we maybe could start having a conversation around where you fit on our 9-box grid and whether or not you're now ready for the next move. Does that kind of make sense? So that was the kind of skills framework. So it allowed us to map people's skills and drive career development and career progression. What was good about this was that we then used what we call a tool called Power BI. And Power BI, everybody who the other thing is you have to get 100% compliance on this, because obviously the data is key. So we got everybody to do this. And as a result of people filling this in, we then pulled the data through Power BI and created a company skills matrix. Oh, question. I was gonna, should we do questions now? Or
we can do questions, absolutely.
I didn't want to.
No, it'll help us.
Sorry, yeah. How did you validate that people were telling the truth?
So, very similar to when you do performance calibrations, we did skills calibrations. So we had skill calibration sessions with their managers, their heads of departments, and senior leadership. So twice a year. So we did skill calibration sessions to make it as accurate as possible. Yeah. What we then did was, like I said, we used Power BI to create an organizational skills matrix. And what was great about this dashboard, it showed us what were the skills, and it would rank them. What were the top 3 skills we were really strong at, at as an organization versus the bottom skills. Yeah? We were able to then share that data with the senior leadership team and identify out of the core skills or out of the skills we were not so good at, which were the critical skills we absolutely had to upskill, improve, do more on, and invest in. And that allowed us to then do organizational learning. So what was great about that? The organizational learning programs that we did were based on absolute standard data and everyone was bought into it, especially the senior leadership team, because they could see this is based on data, all of our people have done this, and we've all agreed these are the skills we're going to focus on. So when we were doing these organizational learning programs, our senior leaders were getting people to go on the program because they were bought in, and it was a really good snapshot. And our exco, our board, absolutely loved the data. Yeah, so a skills matrix. And it would change depending on, and what would happen is you would see a shift and a change in the skills every mid-year review, every review when people filled in the skills framework. Does that make sense? So this skills matrix was very dynamic. And then lastly, was for me, the thing I was most proud of was our skills marketplace. With our job descriptions, what we did was that every job description had the core skills on it that are needed to do that job. And we had a scoring system for each of the skills using those 4 components. Does that make sense? Yeah? So therefore, when we were looking internally to do talent mobility, our process was we have to look internally and offer the roles internally and go into our internal talent marketplace. If there isn't somebody suitable, which sometimes there wasn't, then we would go external. Yeah? But what we would do is we would run a list using our dashboard and say, right, these are the 4 people that are best suited for the role. We would then go to their line managers and ask for their approval and permission. Are they doing well in their performance? Would they be suitable for these roles? And if they were, we would then proactively go to them to identify them for the role. So you had it. What was good was that we had a really good careers website where people were going to the roles themselves. But if you didn't proactively go to a role, there was a chance that we in the people team would come to you and say, there's a role here where there's transferable skills. Would you be interested? And what was great about that, we saw our internal mobility and internal progression in terms of internal vacancy rate increase by 35-40%. And we were saving massively on recruitment costs by using this methodology.
Thank you very much.
I'll hand over to you to talk about it from your perspective.
So our numbers are a little bit different, but like everything else, need to start with a story. So 2019, when everything was wonderful many, many years ago, a small organization of 4,500 employees with more than 300 years of being, just the organization, not me, just so we're very clear, took over a young 3-year upstart in the digital space by the name of Refinitiv. So the London Stock Exchange then managed to get the award for the worst name organization in the world. Most of our population is not in London, and the stock exchange people are about 600 out of 25,000 based in 70 countries. If you think about the best way to think about the London Stock Exchange after 2022 is to think about Bloomberg or anybody who deals in financial and investment information. That's what we do. Not that far from gambling, but that's a different story. So, one of the things that we realized when we went through this was that the new organization that will be created will be very different, will feel very different for both of those groups because the elements that were introduced were very, very different. And we knew that we wanted to bridge that, and that's where the concept of the learning to be skills-based and the organization to be skill-based as a whole came through. We started marketing it to individual as a journey that you can have with us. We, and Dani has seen this slide with numbers, we started marketing this slide as is. This is the journey that we want you to have. Figure out where you are today, what skills do you have, then think about how you can learn and develop, then decide which pathways you want your career to take, and there we'll find where you want to get to. What we found out over the years is that actually this is completely an open world game, to use the youngsters' language. They go everywhere. Some of them find out where they want to get to and then decide how they're going to grow and develop. Some of them say, this is the pathway, and therefore that's how I'm going to get there, and so on. Now, the benefit of a learning framework, as I mentioned, our numbers were a little bit different. So we took the 25,000 roles and we reduced them into 1,000 what we call role profiles. Each of those profiles describes the roles and the skills that you need to be successful in that role. We have anywhere between 8 and 20 roles describing each of the, skills describing each of the roles. Those are graded on the same 4 level of proficiency, and we also talk about what does it look like applying that skill. We have 800 skills in our taxonomy, again, 25,000 people who do very different things. And the process, which took us about 18 months, looked something like this. So if you think about it, we started with an initial mapping, a lot of workshops, a lot of talking to people, asking them, what do we actually need for these roles? A lot of discussions. It's amazing how many times you hear, yes, but our roles are unique. We're absolutely nothing like those people over there. And eventually you corral them into a specific area which starts chipping away. One of the things that we did, we then identified skills and started talking about family groups. So we have 22 family groups across the organizations. For example, the people function, or the people skills, the people role, would be a family group. And that would include things like HR business partners or people in learning and development. However, one of the important things is that our family groups cut across the organization. So you might be a learning person in the people function, or you might be a learning person in the operation arm of the business. You would still need the same roles, the same skills. Sorry about that. Same skills. Those skills might be applied slightly differently in a different context, but they would be very similar, which means that if you wanted to move between those functions, that would be relatively easy. So we spoke to the people, we defined the skills we needed, we then defined the roles by collecting the skills, and we then mapped the proficiencies. Very important to say, this is by no means a done deal. We finished in early last year, so early 2022, we had the year before last year, so early 2022, we had our initial version of the framework. We released it to the people. We also then started bringing in a tool that would be a talent marketplace, and we started shifting the approach, which meant learning based on skill. I want to improve my stakeholder management. Here are some resources. I want to find a mentor for this. Well, these people said they're very good, and we're now using a skills 360 approach, which means that you assess yourself, your manager assesses yourself, but also your stakeholders, because we all know that individual who's very good at managing upwards, but doesn't do anything. But I'm not going to mention any names. So with that in mind, we're running more and more things around skills. So skills-based mentoring, skills-based learning. We're now looking at promotions and progression based on your performance, which is again a derivative of your skill. And internal mobility is starting to crawl up. So with this in mind, we are now putting in place a governance process which will look at the taxonomy we have behind in a continual way. So once a quarter, any requests can come in, be examined. We are working with a very strong vendor in the space, so our taxonomy is constantly evolving, but we're constantly looking at whether we have the right skills connected to the right roles. For example, you're not going to be surprised by this, AI is now creeping into many of our roles, and there are, God knows, a lot of skills related to AI. So, with that in mind, if you are doing the transformation, get ready to write taxonomy, framework. A lot of times, stay away from taxidermy. Not that funny in the boardroom when it comes up. But it really, really does help when you have a set of skills that you're relying on. A lot of vendors will have their own. There are a few open ones out there. There could be a specific one for your industry. And I think that's a very, very powerful space. Now, with that in mind, we also talked about the pitfalls and where you can make mistakes. So what shouldn't you do, and what would you want to stay away from? One of the things that I've just mentioned is not having a single skills framework. You've all been in organizations, and when the organization has more than 5 people, that's when you start hearing about politics. So the skills framework has to be consistent. If this part of the business is talking about project management and this part is talking about program management or managing projects, then you're going to start having a problem. It has to be the same language. Don't forget, because this is something that resonates beautifully with the business, make sure you're using business-oriented language. We're very good at inventing our own terms and drawing our own pyramids and speaking our own language. Skills connect to the business like nothing before. Use it and utilize it. Next up, forgetting the individual. This is for the business, but it'll also make it a lot more attractive for the individual. We have people coming to us now, asking questions, getting involved. I get random teams. I'm thinking of moving jobs. I don't know who you are. And I've just listed my skills, and I need some advice. Okay, and you have a conversation about somebody you've never heard before. The synergy that has suddenly developed between parts of the organization that have never had anything to do with one another, but are relying on the same skills, is really, really interesting. And with that, what I mentioned before, treating the framework as a quest that can be completed, really, really sorry, it cannot. You finish stage A, release, and then continually update it. And that connects very beautifully to treating the whole organization and the same. It's not a big bang. It's a continual thing. And that has been very, very healthy for us in general. So that is my story. You've already heard Dani's. We wanted to make sure that we're leaving time for questions. So the floor is yours.
I think you can also see the difference between our approaches. Asif works for a much larger organization than I did when I did this. So my company was about 4,000 people globally. I didn't have the luxury of having a dedicated team for skills. So very much it was around creating something that we could kind of easily implement across our 4,000 people. But as you can see, he takes it to the next level in terms of the do's and the don'ts and being able to really dive in. So I think the two perspectives are quite nice. So, yeah.
We have a question, folks.
Hi, gents. Great presentation. Thanks for sharing that. Got a question around skills matrices. In my experience, these can often grow arms and legs and become huge and Frankenstein monsters. Yeah. What are your tips to keeping those under control?
From my perspective, that's a really great question. If you guys understand insights and DISC and all that stuff, cool blue and compliance is my least stuff. So too much data and information really kind of frazzles my brain. I'm very much about keeping things simple. So what we did was when I was speaking to our internal data team, because they get very excited when you ask them to do anything, they want to make some magical unicorn. I just said to them, all we need is being really clear on what your objective and goal is. All I want to be able to do is have a dynamic matrix that tells us what are our top skills, what are our least kind of skills that we have, and have it that if our input changes from our skills framework, it's all connected, so it's dynamic. So every time we have people inputting into the skills framework for the mid-year and end-of-year review, the skill matrix changes. So what's good about that is that when we do things like organizational learning or people implement their development plan, we know it's working because skills that were bottom 6 months ago have now moved up to mid-tier, and that was all I asked for. Anything else, it was, it can predictive this and do this. I was like, no, let's get used to using the matrix first, and then we can start adding more things to it.
Cool, brilliant, thank you.
And I think, is that different because of the scale of your organization and the number of things that are going on?
To a degree. I think what you'll get a lot is uniqueness. And I think you need to start with what is the objective of the taxonomy that you're putting in place. And I'll give you an example. We made a mistake. For us, the objective was all about internal mobility, so we cut back on the number of skills. On average, we went for about 12. we're now finding that there are certain parts of the organization we just say, oh, software development, that's a skill. C++, JavaScript, that's it. No, just software development is good enough. Okay, yeah, this isn't really useful for us. Well, you didn't put in the amount of skills. So I think what you're looking for is, what is it intended for? Once you have that, you can set the topic. I think we've found that about 20 skills to develop a role for us works in a reasonable way. You need to be careful from under granularity or over, because you might go, yeah, these 50 skills is exactly what you need. Nobody will ever, 50 skills is crazy. On the other hand, if you have 3 skills, anybody can do them. So there's a balance there.
Hi, thank you. So I'm guessing that you didn't do all this just with lots and lots of Excel spreadsheets. What technology did you use to support the process?
Yeah, so from my perspective, like I said, I was lucky enough in the organization I worked in that we had a kind of internal data analyst team. We had a kind of internal data team. I think you'd be surprised the amount of people internally that have the skills to do stuff around Excel. As much as it's probably the bugbear of a lot of people's lives. Excel can actually do a lot of stuff if you know how to use it properly. I know some people who can proficiently use Excel to a really good level. So one of the things I'm really good at is utilizing our internal resource. So we said, this is what we're looking to do. Is there anybody internally who want to help us? It's like a special project. And actually, you'd be surprised the amount of people who put themselves forward, and we were able to get approval from their line managers to help us with this project. They end up doing all the work for us, kind of creating the dashboard that we needed. We also use the platform called Power BI. I don't know how to use it, but we've got internal people that do, and it kind of pulls through all the data from the framework, and it's very fluid, and it creates a dashboard for you. It creates a league table, and all it does is you go into a data sheet where you input stuff like your every day-to-day person, and then it's very dynamic. All we have to do and focus on as a people team is ensuring our people are compliant and are doing their mid-year review, having their career conversations, and everything moves, which is quite nice for us. But what I would suggest is that you front load it by getting the platform right so that you have less maintenance to do when you're actually trying to do the work. Yeah. So Power BI is the platform.
By Microsoft, yeah.
Yeah. But Power BI is Microsoft. That's what our guys use internally, yes.
Yeah, I have to say, very embarrassingly, we did a lot of it in Excel.
Excel's not bad.
There are I agree. There are some vendors who will say, we'll do it for you. We have a power automating thingy majiggy. I'm yet to be impressed with those. I think you need to start by discussing and looking at what works. Look at the high performers. How are they doing what they're doing? And you can start inferring the skills. At some point, somebody will need to sit down and list it. If it's Excel, don't do it in Microsoft Word. But if it's Excel, I think it is doable. But Power BI?
I think if we're quick, we've got a chance for a couple more.
I'm going to be greedy, I'm sorry. I have 2 questions. I hope it will help everyone. I'm interested in how you measured success. So what KPIs did you put in place? And also, how did you drive up engagement? Because people are busy being busy, right? So you're wanting them to upskill, but have they got the time to do that? How do you get the engagement with line managers across the business to keep the momentum of this going?
Really simply, we run a people survey every 6 months, and it's called our thermometer. And one of the trends that came out was that there wasn't clear career development and clear career conversations and progression happening, especially coming out of COVID. So we latched onto that and used that word in terminology because that's what people were crying out for. Well, the KPIs we used were the percentage of internal promotions that are taking place, retention. We also looked at the recruitment costs, because I don't know about you, our recruitment costs quadrupled after COVID because recruitment agencies went absolutely nuts and put their prices up because it was a candidates market, as you know. So we were able to show that we reduced recruitment costs, our attrition rates were better, and we had more internal mobility and progression and promotion as a result of this. Does that make sense?
Completely with that. I have to say, when it comes to looking at the people that you already have, so the example that I give, we are a very complex organization. There are 25,000 people in this planet of 7, 8, 9 billion, I don't know anymore, who know about the organization. To a degree, it's easier to pick up, I don't know, JavaScript, and apologies to all the software developers there, than it is to understand the London Stock Exchange Group. There's also a component that has to do with the fact that the people, and we have people that we've been with us for 13 years and 19 years and even longer, those people know more than anybody else. And we need to make sure that we're giving them the opportunities. So that comes back to exactly that. The KPIs have to be, are we making use of the skills we have in the organization? Are we supporting the people that we have? And that will make it easier for the organization as well. So it's, again, a pincers movement here. We're trying to be sure that we're not getting, you have a known quantity. That's an individual, they have skills, they know the organization. You know what they're like because they've been with you 5 years. If you move them to another role, they might need to pick up 1 or 2 of the skills, but they are still a known quantity. Bring somebody from the outside, A, cost of recruitment. B, they are an unknown quantity. How will they behave inside? Will they pick it up? Everybody says, yeah, we'll recruit that individual within 3 to 6 months, they'll be up and running. 3 to 6 months. By 3 to 6 months, the project might be closed. So that is definitely, internal mobility is definitely a KPI that we keep an eye on. Absolutely. You said you had a second question, I think. You said you were going to be greedy.
Have we got the mic?
Yeah, so it's about how we drive up engagement. So for us, I think engagement is about communicating the value of this. And for me, the value of this is, if we know what skills you have, you are more likely to get opportunities. You are more likely to be supported internally, and vice versa, you can support others.
And we just, we use the terminology and the insight and the language we got from our people surveys and communicate it back to our business to say, this is what you guys are saying you want, and therefore we have created this, and this is the route we're going down because you guys have told us this. Obviously, one of the main reasons, but we didn't communicate it to the business, was that our senior leaders and boards wanted us to go down this route from a profitability and commerciability point of view, but you don't communicate that to the people. We used our people surveys as their language.
We've got chance for a very short question. One more short question, if somebody has it. The gentleman at the back over there.
So I don't know if this is short, but for things like software development, how do you deal with the nuances? You talked about software engineering versus Java, JavaScript, blah, blah, blah.
So, interestingly enough, we have this discussion right now. We went with I said pincers movement before, so I said it again, don't know why. But we've gone down a little bit. So we've added branches. I'll stick with C++ and JavaScript, for example. We didn't put that into the specific role description so that we have some flexibility. On the other side, we've asked individuals to add, if we're talking about JavaScript, so let's talk libraries. We've asked them to add libraries as skills so that we can still search the database for anybody with library X or Y, but the role description is a little bit more generic. I don't know if that answers the question. Perfect. See, short.
Great stuff. Ladies and gentlemen, time has beaten us once again. I'm sure Dani and Asi will be around. If you have a burning question that you didn't have a chance to answer, grab hold of these guys. But before you do, join me with thanking them for their input.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Somewhere there is a little QR code. I have a little survey, which is there it is. Essentially, as part of the session that I'm doing at the end of tomorrow, I want to know what you're going to do differently as a result of what you've seen and heard over the course of these 2 days. So that is a single answer question. You can answer it as many times as you like. So when the screen stays back on, there it is. Great. You can use that to answer that question, and I'll incorporate that into my session tomorrow evening. Asi, thank you very much indeed. Dani, thank you very much indeed.